Into this one, huh? This is Zoe Vault. Vault is a card from previous on in this latest overall expansion, in that it is one of the landmarks that hangs out on your bench and gives you an effective return. Round start, if you can, kill your most expensive ally to summon an ally from your deck that costs one more. So this encourages us to construct our deck in a way that we have different units along most parts of the curve. So you'll note my deck goes from 1 all the way up to 10 here at the very top end with Aurelion Sol. So at the tippy top end of our curve, we've got Hecarim into Rekindler, into Mind Splitter, into Ledros, into a couple of Asol here. And again, notably, this says if you can. So if you get to Asol in play and there's no 11 drop in your deck, it does not sacrifice your Asol. The bottom end of our curve is a bunch of just good, efficient units within Targon. So we've got Goat, Shield Bearer, Sparklefly, Zoe as a couple of champions, some Mentor of Stones, because this provides value when it dies. It gives us some gems. We got some Broadback Protector here. This will give us 3 life on the way out the door before it turns into something. And then I looked over all the different 5 drops, and I felt like Fused Firebrand was probably the best 5 drop because this insulates itself. So like playing this with Spell Shield gives us the best chance to get to turn it into something else with the Vaults of Helia. So I think we're going to go ahead and jump into some games with this one and see how it feels. Oh, already in the play button. Lord Smeagol, thank you for the brand new Prime support. There's a lot of great places you can drop that off every single month here on Twitch. Thanks for sending it my way this month and keeping me employed. To keep Sparklefly against an opposing Zoe deck. If I'm mulligan the rest of these looking for cheaper things on curve. Oh no. Hey, I'm glad you're enjoying it, G-Money. Yeah, Zoe Lux is definitely one of my favorite Zoe decks in the format. Thankfully, we got plenty of ways to heal back here, chat. Yep, so they are very likely they're the Allegiance deck guaranteed because of that. The Shadow Isle is usually an Atrocity Splash, so being able to heal back up here should be valuable.
The Charger chases stars across the sky.
Getting to kill this here sounds great. Get to heal back up a little bit. Hopefully generate a play for next turn. I mean, to be fair, the way we're set up at the moment, our deck is positioned to make it to the late game. So, like, if we make it to the late game, all of these bombs that we have here are going to be very good, right? So, like, it's a little clunky to start, but we're probably going to survive to get there. See if they have second Pale Cascade here or not. They also haven't played anything for the turn, so if they did, they wouldn't get the trigger from it. This is unfortunately going to die. Maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe I'm not supposed to block there to keep the extra 3 life on it, especially with the Vault of Helia draw.
Argon's history is in each stone and
Worth
star.
noting that Vault's actually not even going to be good here because of how unfortunate our draw has been.
Stay strong.
God, these rekindlers suck.
Sunlight guide you, my brethren.
No peace till we have retribution. The warrior, deliberate and ruthless.
Into that trade. Okay with that trade.
Trickster never loses because Zoe makes the rules.
Yeah, I always update the decks on my site to be the latest iteration of things.
It's just your mind crumbling under
If I think something's not worth playing anymore, I take it down off the site. Do I want to play this out?
Zoe, I'm a serious artist.
I think the answer is yes. It's trying to play this card, Vaults of Helia. Yeah, I think Vaults could definitely could definitely stand to come down in mana cost.
Are they still here?
I guess stunning Zoe's not even that good because like we need to kill her at some point so she doesn't emblem.
He descended through sheer force of will.
Nebula.
Follow the path.
We dead? This is 11-12, not quite. Dead to Pale Cascade. We're not getting any balance patches till February comments that like are such a good example of how misinformation and negative information travel more quickly through the internet than actual facts do. I get that there was a Reddit post that somebody made for clickbait outrage and that a bunch of people didn't actually go look at the clip that was actually referenced in that Reddit video. But if you think there's not going to be a patch till February, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to what Steve Rubin actually said instead of just parroting what people were bitching about. For those who are lazy, because I know people are lazy, the actual words that Steve Rubin shared were the changes for the patch in January are already in.
Name of the
and he didn't confirm or deny whether or not they were going to include balance changes, but he didn't explicitly say that there weren't. He just said they had already been decided. Which could mean there's none, but it also doesn't strictly mean that. When I play Shield Bearer for the Daybreak effect, because it doesn't matter. Because we're not attacking. Because they're not attacking. Yes, that's what he said. He said there's a patch in January, but the contents are already locked in. He said nothing about what the actual contents were. He did not say there's no balance changes. He just said the changes have already been decided and are in the pipeline. Which, to me, would imply, hey, the patch that's coming in January, don't expect it to make changes off of information that's happened after or during the holidays. Yes, yeah, and that's exactly there. Changes to Go Hard or Shen Fiora could be possible in this upcoming patch because those are changes that they likely knew they needed to make before this latest release. I thought it's fair. Yeah, and that's exactly my point. Bullshit and misinformation and things that makes people upset travels way faster and more rapidly on the internet than actual truth. Because people hear the thing and they don't actually listen to the source. They just listen to what the original person that wanted to generate clicks had to say about the source, and then they spread misinformation without knowing it. Universities have done studies that show that misinformation and wrong things that are untruthful and lies propagate much faster on social media than actual truth does. Because actual truth tends to not be flashy and exciting or generate input. And the thing you need to understand about social media is that social media operates in its entirety off of engagement, and people being pissed off generates way more engagement than people being happy. So the social media algorithms encourage you to post bullshit because they spread bullshit more, because their algorithms aren't designed to differentiate truth from not or right from wrong. They're just there to generate more clicks because clicks are profitable. If you're someone that hasn't watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it's worth your hour and a half, or whatever it is.
Requires concentration.
When a card gets nerfed, does Riot give you a refund like an Hearthstone? They don't, because in Runeterra, the cards aren't super expensive. Also, when Riot nerfs a card, very rarely do they nerf it in a way that makes it unplayable afterwards. Cards are cheap, and they usually don't nerf things in a way that makes them unplayable.
Something for all.
Like, Go Hard is a playable effect in the opponent's deck, even if it costs 4 or 5 mana to pack your bags. So I actually don't want to attack, or if I do attack, I want to gem first, that way I don't get locked out of cards in my hand.
Clear off.
If I attacked and they traded, I'd burn the card I was drawing next turn, which wouldn't be good.
There's plenty of Kenneth left.
I like my butterfly. Don't kill my butterfly.
Ye started without me.
I mean, pack your bags isn't even just 1 mana ruination. It's much better than that, right? Like, pack your bags is good because it's one-sided and it's reach. Like, the fact that it helps you kill your opponent in addition to everything else that it does is why it's good.
Watch the ball first. You poor thing.
I mean, our average card quality is actually quite high. If you look at the list of cards my deck is playing, most of them are good cards. Like this and Vault are probably the worst cards in my deck.
Now this game's heating up. A game. Go on and watch the ball, folks.
There's like 100 different ways they could balance the Thomas Stone. Take your pick on one of the 100 changes they could make that would make it fine.
Eyes open.
This is gonna be another lose level Twisted Fate game, right? And this is actually, so this is kind of highlighting part of the problem with Vaults of Helia as a whole. I feel like this archetype really needs like a good Flame Tongue Kavu to be competitive, to use a Magic term. It really needs a way to have units that allow it to interact with the board. And it just doesn't have that currently. I have to play so many units to be able to make Vault playable that then when they play a must answer threat like this, I just get got. Hey Jace, thanks for the 20 months. I appreciate that. Welcome back. Good morning. If I pat, and this is a tough part, right? Like, I need to develop so they don't burn my mana, but then I develop and I end up in a kind of a mediocre spot.
Hold it, partner.
No particularly good challengers in our regions, unfortunately.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, and again, like, we're in another situation like we were last game where, like, I have Vault in my hand, but playing Vault is actually just worse than, like, playing the cards that I've drawn.
I'm a piece of
Might be a quick first couple of Runeterra decks today. I mean, like, people that are complaining about the opponent's deck there, like, I get that it's easier to complain about my opponent's deck than it is to acknowledge that, like, my deck as constructed doesn't seem very functional because the deck building requirement that Vault has put on me means I'm unable to play an efficient number of answers. Like, what's actually happened there requires nuance and details to talk about, whereas go hard, unfun, please nerf, derp, derp, derp is like easy, quick, clickbaity, and catchy. I would say that the way that game played out shows kind of the fundamental problem with how Vault decks tend to have in this format currently, as opposed to any issues with my opponent's deck explicitly.
There's nothing to fear.
Yeah, we've had 2 opportunities to play Vault so far in this set in 2 games, and every time we've had the opportunity to play Vault, it was wrong to play Vault, and we just played other cards instead because they were better to play. That's my takeaway so far. My takeaway so far from this deck is we've had the opportunity to play the card we built our deck around, and every time we've had the opportunity to do it, it was wrong to do so.
It's just your mind crumbling under what it doesn't understand, silly!
Yeah, Feel the Rush has a good go hard matchup because of a mixture of Avalanche and Whale being good in that matchup. Feel the Rush being a card they have a hard time answering that kills them quickly, and you not playing a lot of cheap units to enable their go hards early. I think I'm supposed to trade aggressively. I think I'm supposed to keep Zoe around. Yeah, let's keep Zoe. I have this to heal back up with. It's not worth gaining one.
Everyone here? Let's go.
I mean, we're not an aggro deck, Knacker, so like non-aggressive decks, we're kind of just like this awkward value deck that's looking to get, like, that's what Vault is, right? Vault's not an aggressive card. Playing a 5-cost card that doesn't impact the board the turn you play it doesn't lead to aggressive linear draws.
How can someone be so boring?
No, not really, Toolboxer. The closest thing to that is
Struggle. Now enjoy it.
the closest thing to that is Karma Control, and even that tends to kill people pretty quickly, and it's not very good to begin with.
I'll protect you.
Smooth as silk.
Well, we're gonna have plenty of life here at least, and we get to curve Hecarim into this, into this, into these up here, so like, maybe we can survive with all the life game. I don't know, I think there's a bunch of reasonable landmarks we have already.
What's in here?
Like, both Scargrounds and Plaza are super reasonable. We are very good at drawing Rekindler so far today. You're not wrong about that.
Danger noodle.
Stand back.
Yeah, Slaughter Dogs is also one that's super reasonable, I think. I agree with that. This is a Rekindler deck in disguise. Our deck certainly seems to think so. Starspring was tier 1. I don't think the data ever agreed with that statement. Is Precipic here? Was Soraka Kench ever tier 1 play rate or win rate? I'm attacking with this to start, because if they kill it, we can Rekindler it back. If they don't kill it, we're gonna Rekindler back as Zoe, because I need to play my mana this turn, but
Reporting in.
One candle for every soul.
I actually don't remember what it oscillated between, and I'd prefer not to use random anecdotes. What does that even mean? Stop it. I hate that.
And if it helps,
in general, I try not to call out specific people on specific things, but one thing, BBG's a great player, but one thing he does super consistently that irks me is he arbitrarily assigns tiers to deck lists based on his feelings that are run contrary to what like the data on Mobalytics says about those archetypes. And it's fine to say like I like or don't like these deck lists based on my personal experience with it, but like don't say that like the deck that's popular and has a good win rate is like arbitrarily tier 3, or the deck that you like but isn't popular and doesn't have a good win rate is tier 1. Like in a game like Runeterra, where we have this incredible wealth of information provided by Riot via the API, things based on tiers should be data driven, not based on random people's feelings about the game. Feeling pretty dead. I disagree with that, Skullbone. And this is where experience is relevant in situations. This deck has a low win rate because it's hard to play. That's a cop-out. The deck has a low win rate because it isn't very good, and it's hard to play means that even though it isn't very good, you can still do well with it if you play well. It means your good play can make up for the fact that the deck is bad. And that's something players do too infrequently. They get emotionally invested in whatever deck they're playing, and they make up stories in their mind to validate why their pet deck isn't bad. It's just hard to play. And it's okay to like a deck that isn't very good. Like, having a deck that you enjoy, like, a deck being objectively good or bad shouldn't change your enjoyment of playing it. Like, you're allowed to enjoy playing a deck that isn't very good. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. And I don't want this to get into it. This is why I usually don't talk about specific people when I talk about things, but like I watch BBG is someone I watch a good bit when I'm watching Runeterra content. That's something that he does consistently. Let's get off of talking about other people in specifics. That was I take responsibility for that. I probably shouldn't have brought it up to begin with. Damn it! They gained 1, which means my Ledros isn't lethal anymore. Yikes. BBG likes pineapple on his pizza, so he's the best type of people then. There's only 2 types of people in the world, chat. People that like pineapple on their pizza and people who are wrong. Make sure you're in the right category.
We each died, then found hope.
We're gonna give this one or 2 more shakes. We're on the rank floor anyways, but so far this one does not. I think I'm gonna be done taking Vaults of Helia as a submission until the card gets a rework after this one. Yeah, Rekindler's a really good card. Our deck feels like it's winning some games in spite of Vault, not because of it.
What you doing over there?
What you doing over there? The other very human thing that's super annoying is when I point out something like, my deck's not bad, it's just hard to play, and I say that almost always means your deck is bad, but a good player is propping it up. Some nerd pokes into chat and pushes their glasses up and goes, actually, Jeff, there's this one edge case where what you're saying isn't true, Jeff. Yeah, that's why if you listen to the words that came out of my mouth, I said, in most cases and most of the time. My verbiage left edge cases to exist because I understand that the world is not binary and edge cases are a thing. So, like, if you spent time listening to what I actually said as opposed to what you wanted to hear, you would know that what I said allowed for edge cases to be a thing.
Ship time.
That's the other thing, too. When you see Runeterra players who are better than me, fuck off. There's a lot of, and this is something that's not unique to Runeterra in the community, like, there's a lot of elitism among people that play card games competitively. This idea that because I'm hanging out in Plat, playing viewer deck submissions, that I'm a bad Runeterra player and, like, worse than these other Runeterra players, that's such bullshit. There's no objective measure for who's a good card game player and who's not. These games have a ton of variance, and the only way to figure out who's good and who's bad is through incredibly large sample sizes, and Runeterra hasn't even existed as a game for a full calendar year, so the idea that we've had enough consistent Runeterra high-level play in less than a calendar year to dictate who's great and who's not is very much nonsense.
Strike, we will reform.
Do not disappoint me. Punish restraint. Cut the breath from them.
A gift from the river folk.
It's like there was a lot of nonsense feedback from people that were upset that the seasonal tournament effectively used a single elimination cut. And it's like, well, and they were like talking about how they wanted it to be double elimination or all these other structures, not realizing that all the other structures that they were recommending also include an incredible amount of variance, because tournaments are designed to create losers, not winners, and any tournament that has to cut 1,000 players down to 32 players is going to be an incredibly brutal cut, regardless of how you slice it. The Hall of Fame, thanks for the follow, welcome to the channel. And like, even here again, right? Like, I have the opportunity to play Vault this turn, but I probably don't want to.
Everyone here?
Yeah, like, I'd rather play this to block the Zed, right?
Protects me.
They won't suffer long. Only the worthy survive.
Feels like anytime you get a Tarek deck, he just sits in your hand because there's never a good time to play him. Yeah, that's a good comparison, I think. Cindy BB, welcome to the channel. Thanks for the follow. For folks that are new to the channel, by the way, you hear me talking about tournament play and sample sizes and stuff like that. Before I started streaming Runeterra, I streamed Magic the Gathering as a full-time job here on Twitch. Before I streamed Magic full-time, I spent several years traveling around the United States as a professional Magic the Gathering player, playing in lots of tournaments. I have a couple dozen, several hundred to 1,000-person top 8 finishes in those tournaments. I have a master's in mathematics. I'm a very analytically minded person. So I tend to approach things from a statistical background, statistical viewpoint. K Smith, thanks for the 27 months. I appreciate that. Welcome back. Thanks for keeping me around. And like even here, right? Like my three drop is the support unit. So like, do I even want to play this and get the 3-drop? I'm gonna play it out at this point, because I feel like I just need to put it into play and like let it do some things, but I feel like it's probably not even worth playing here.
My life for the order. Scorching light.
Yeah, let's at least try and do the thing, right?
This one's trouble.
Maybe this is wrong, because like now I'm gonna lose this to the vault and then just have a 1/1.
Kneel students, rise warriors.
How do you recognize a better player? I mean, a lot of it's just this arbitrary pissing contest, Knacker. It's just like the blunt truth of it. It's super subjective. At a certain point, like, at a certain point when you've had large enough sample sizes, like, I don't think it's unfair to say I was a good Magic player because, I top 8'd dozens of tournaments and my top 8 rate was like close to 25%, which top 8ing 25% of the large tournaments you played in is considered good. Yeah, we're just super. I think we're gonna be done with this one. That's real bad. But like it's all just super subjective measurements, and a lot of it, better or worse at a certain degree, comes down to popularity in a pissing contest more so than anything objective. Yeah, it's subjective and it's relative, and like you could mitigate some of the subjectivity with larger sample sizes at a certain point, but even that, like, there's still going to be some subjectivity and favorability depending on who you like factored into it. As far as this is concerned, to give a concise wrap on this one before we move along to the next one, the big thing that stood out in my mind compared to other vaults in general, I think it's just not a card I'm going to play anymore until it gets a rework on stream. Just a 5-mana card like this that doesn't play to the board is, it's just a tough sell. And on top of it being kind of weak because it's a 5-mana card that doesn't play to the board, this deck also comes at a very real deck building cost, right? Like, to get the most out of this card, you need an expensive top end to curve out into at the end of it. And we saw in a number of those games that we played in this set how we just had too many things in. We just had too many hands where we just had a bunch of 7 and 8 drop, and we didn't have anything to play early on in the set. Past that, another issue that we had trying to play a bunch of cheap units in the deck is that having to play a bunch of units in our deck also meant that we didn't have room to play a lot of meaningful interaction. These two regions that I'm playing here don't have a lot of challenger units, and I didn't have room to include things like Vengeance on top of that because I already have so much other expensive top end. So the Targon pairing here especially didn't feel good, but honestly, even in other regions that are better pairings for this, I just don't think this card's very good because of the payoff in proportion to the deck building cost that it puts on you. Jack Fury, thank you for the 3/4 VR. I appreciate that. Welcome back. Yeah, I mean that's just not even a question. The one true dodge. If this card lets you choose each turn what you were doing with it, it would be much better. Like an interesting way, like for example, a way they could rework this card is instead of it being round start, you could make this card give you a 0 mana created card each turn, where when you play that 0 mana card, you pick the unit and then it turns that unit into something that costs 1 more, and you could make it give you that 0 cost card when you play it in addition to round start, so that way it gets to do something the turn it comes down. But there's a lot of ways that they could rework this, from giving you a created spell to give you more control over it, to making it just cheaper in mana cost, so it's easier to justify, you know, a 3 mana card that doesn't play to the board. Yeah, they could make it to play or round start, so it does something when it comes down right away. Sure, yeah, pairing this card with Demacia stuff makes it marginally less embarrassing compared to Targon here, but even paired with Demacia cards, we've played Demacia Vault builds in the past. Those also don't feel particularly good in my experience. They're still not super competitive because of, again, the deck building cost that this requires you to have, having this expensive top end for this to really be a good payoff. The fact that once you get your most expensive unit into play, this card just stops doing anything, and it still takes up a spot on your board, makes it really bad. Do you think the tournament system in Runeterra working completely in client? Do the tournament system in Runeterra, are they completely in client, or is there some website overview for matchmaking necessary? No, the seasonal tournaments, Tanalor, for Runeterra are 100% in client. They haven't perfected that yet. We've had just one set of seasonal tournaments, but they have a spectator mode built into it, and the first seasonal tournament was held completely in client. And I would assume that that's based on, as we get deeper into this year, we'll see more expansion on the tournament mode. Like I'm hoping that the fact that they took the time to get a full tournament mode in client means that we're going to see more tournaments coming up on the Runeterra side. I have a favorite deck that I played the past few days. You can always find my favorite decks played each day on the Hooglandia Highlights YouTube channel. Every day I play 3 to 4 different deck lists, and the best of them get a 20 to 30 minute highlight there on the highlight channel. Hey, good luck in the rest of your laddering today, USOP. All right, let's move on to the next deck here. We can